Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Rob Aquino, the CEO of JBS since June 2023. Rob is deeply committed to driving strategic planning initiatives that propel the company forward. With a background in corporate finance as a financial consultant, his passion for economic development, business growth, and financial literacy continues to guide his leadership at JBS. Rob, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you. For our listeners, Rob's full bio will be in the show notes to kind of highlight everything that he's done throughout his career. But Rob, I would love to kick off the show by having you share more about yourself, what you do at JBS, even how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, JBS is a very cool family story. We're actually going to celebrate our 20th anniversary this May.
Amazing.
And when JBS was founded 20 years ago, I was turning 11. So, we're second generation owners, if you will. My stepfather started it in 2005. Um, he did it kind of on an ultimatum. We lived in New York before moving to Massachusetts in 2003. My mom was finally convinced by her sister, who's also another serial entrepreneur, to come to Mass to help her grow a new business. And she basically told my stepfather, "Hey, I know you have a tax practice for 14 years now in New York, but I'm moving to Massachusetts with my kids, and we'd love for you to come." So he had a 2-year deal still with the tax firm. So for 2 years, he was commuting and he was living in New York for the first 3 months of the year and then came back home to Mass. And after his stint ended in '05, he decided I'm going to start my own practice with no clients in an area where I know no one. And that's how Jacqueline Business Services came to be. That's what JBS stands for. Jacqueline, because all of my family businesses are named Jacqueline after my first cousin.
Oh, wow.
So, the brand had already been in existence, but in the food industry, and people knew it so well here that he just kind of piggybacked on the brand
Hmm.
and started the practice in '05. Very quickly recruited my brother, who was 20 at the time, who didn't really know what he wanted to do with his life and had a 1-year-old daughter. So he was like, "Listen, kid, I don't want to see you working dead-end jobs. I've been doing tax for 15 years. I can teach you tax, and you can at least do the simple returns."
Hmm.
What he didn't know was my brother's a natural salesperson and very charismatic. And so by year two, my brother had already grown a larger client base than my stepfather had.
Wow.
Um, Really cool story. And really from then all the way to like 2019, it was just a traditional, classic, organic growth story. They hired their first family member after my brother, and
Hmm.
then they needed help with office stuff. So they convinced another family member to come join. And the first 7 or 8 people were all related. And half of them were seasonal. When April rolled around, it was like, all right, we're done. We don't really need you guys anymore, but thanks for all your help.
Yeah.
And when I came in formally in 2020, after I had just sold my financial planning practice, that's when we engaged on a strategic growth plan
Hmm.
to attempt to 10x the business over the course of 5 years.
Hmm.
It's been a great roller coaster ever since.
So is that why you came in? Because your family and everyone else who was at JBS at the time was like, listen, we need to really take things up a notch, and Rob is the person to help us do that. Or I'd love to hear like what it was that brought you in specifically. I know you mentioned
Yeah.
selling your financial planning practice as
Um,
well.
in a roundabout way, it was COVID.
Mm.
But my brother had been attempting. So when I graduated from college in 2015, I had already had a 1-year internship in wealth management. I had already started my practice. My brother was my first client, and he had already felt some real results. He started doing financial planning for the first time when he was 30.
Hmm.
And I found him with a great business and great income with a ton of debt and zero assets outside of the business. So the first year, we started working on budgeting. He started investing for the first time. He opened up a retirement account, a brokerage account. He got some of his estate plan in order, and he felt really good about that. For the first time, he was looking at money very different. He was no longer thinking like a consumer and started realizing, if I don't own anything, I'm not going to get ahead.
Hmm.
Um, and he was so happy about that experience with us doing the personal planning that he asked me if I could do any financial planning for the business. So for a few years, I was their fractional CFO, helping institute pricing models, better compensation strategies, hiring models. And that was working so well. That's when the business really started to grow organically still. But instead of like 10% a year, it was like 30% a year.
Hmm.
So since 2016, he's been asking me to leave the financial planning business to come full time with him.
Yeah.
And I was just saying, no, I like this. You're paying for the first year, I did it for free. After that, he twisted my stepfather's arm and said, "We got to pay this kid. He's really helping us." So I was making good money there. I think at the time something like 30, 40K a year. Then I had my practice and I was making good money there. And I'm in my mid 20s and I was very happy with the way things were. Um, when COVID hit, and I specialized when I was a financial advisor with working with small business owners.
Hmm.
Very different kind of retirement planning and financial planning with a business owner than a traditional employee. So I already knew all the ins and outs that they suffer with. I was already helping with proper accounting infrastructure because if I didn't understand the accounting of the business, how could I build a financial plan for the owner?
Right.
Um, and when I found out what the SBA was doing with the Paycheck Protection Program and the economic injury disaster loans, I realized, oh my God, no one in Lawrence, which is where most of our clients are, is going to be able to qualify for this. There's $6 trillion coming from the federal government, and no one's going to be able to qualify for it. So after the stock market dropped, I spoke to all my clients, convinced them not to sell anything. If they had money, convinced them to buy a little bit more stock. A lot of people reached out to me very happy after 6 months. And I did that. And then I told my managing director, hey, I'm going to go help my family business for a little bit. So I'm just going to stop taking on new clients because I'm really worried about them. And then I'll
Yeah.
come right back. And I came in very quickly, called my brother-in-law, who's a phenomenal accountant, best I know, who's with us now. And I said, hey, you looking for some side money? And we built the very first bookkeeping product at JBS, literally March of 2020.
Wow.
And we gained something like 50 clients in 2 months. And we
That's
also did,
crazy.
yeah, yep. And we also did free services for like another 150 who were just too small to engage formally.
Hmm.
And we probably helped 5 to 600, I don't remember the exact number, legal entities in and around Lawrence acquire the PPP and or EIDL.
Amazing.
So that became a whole, we literally finished that tax season in April and we pivoted to SBA support.
Hmm.
And I never went back to work.
And so you transitioned from the fractional CFO to the CEO. What was
See,
that
I
like?
transitioned to the full-time CFO.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So then but you became CEO in June 2023, is that right?
Yeah. So 3 years later,
Gotcha.
and it was a heck of a 3 years. At the time, we were with 6 partners.
Hmm.
We were closing in on 3 million in revenue. When in 2019 we had closed out at one, so we'd experienced really dramatic growth. We acquired our headquarters now, which was a massive acquisition for us. We acquired a smaller tax practice in Haverhill. Like we were just on a rampage. And then what happened, the best I can put it, is I had partners who, once we hit that three-ish mark, felt like they were acting like we had hit the 10, like we had done it, and they had wanted to start transitioning to distribution of funds as opposed to reinvestment.
Hmm.
And, they wanted to treat the C-level team a little bit different and prematurely, in my opinion, my brother's opinion. So we started having a lot of differences in philosophies, and eventually we just asked the partners to separate.
Yeah.
And we did it in a way where no one really took too much harm. So for most of the partners, we literally allowed them to walk away with their clientele.
Oh, that's good then.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was not what was in the best interest of the legal entity, but it worked out for all 6 of us personally. We
Hmm.
we were able to sleep with that. And after all of that growth and then disruption, the business was in a really weird place.
Yeah.
Its operating expenses and the size of the investments it had made no longer fit the business properly. The direction that the business was going in was entirely different now. My brother, who was the CEO at the time, did a phenomenal job at a clean exit across everyone that didn't want to be here. And about a year into that, I decided it was my turn to exit. And that conversation ended up me being promoted.
And so what was that like? Like what changed your mind and what made you become CEO in that instance?
I was feeling very frustrated. So I walked into a board of directors meeting. They had their own agenda. I scrapped it and I said, I have some things I have to get off my chest. I was feeling frustrated with what we were doing. It felt like we were running in circles. We were on track now to take the second net operating loss in a row in a business that has never experienced a net operating loss in its history. Um, Everybody was just, I felt like the core of our team was running at maybe 90 to 100% capacity during tax season. We're used to 150, and then like 30 to 40% capacity in the off season. So productivity was low, motivation was low, and that's not how I operate.
Right.
So my proposal was to come in, right size the business to what it actually was, not what we were going for, get it to a good profitability metric, give it to my brother successfully, allow it to grow organically, and then walk away to figure out what I'm going to do next. I was going to retain my equity position to make sure that I still have skin in the game. I was going to stay on as a fractional CFO. And then I don't know what I was going to do after that. My wife was a little worried. We had a daughter already.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, and when I proposed this, something told me to make one more proposal. I don't know why. So I said, or you guys can give me full reins, no restrictions. The only two things I'm not allowed to do as a minority partner, which is very unique, is introduce or remove a partner
Mhm.
or spend more than 50,000 in one place at one time. Everything else, no restrictions. And their opportunity to pull that from me is to let me go with a 6 month severance. So that's kind of the checks and balances of it. And oddly enough, there was a 5-1 vote on that. I did not think that's how it was going to play out.
Yeah. And so once you ended up coming in as the CEO, that was like about a year and a half ago as of this recording.
Mhm.
What has it been like since then? Like, I'd love to hear what you've implemented,
Hmm.
like how you obviously have turned things around at
It was
JBS and
crazy.
what's come out of that.
It was crazy. Cut me off whenever you want. I'll try to give you the quick story. That happened in July. By September, I introduced a turnaround strategy. It was a 3 year strategy that I was giving everyone piecemeal, 1 year at a time.
Hmm.
The first one was, we had just operated a negative 10% loss. I wanted to turn that around to a 10% profit in the following year. So it was about a 500K swing of net income. I wanted to do that with the same team and the same products.
Hmm.
Um, I was able to cut like 20,000 a month of expenses without anybody feeling it per se. The business felt it, but our people didn't.
Yeah.
And when I realized that that wasn't going to be enough, I was going to have to either lay off 2 full-time people, or make salary changes across the board. I talked to something like 6 people on my team that know me, that I trust well, including my partners, of course, but also some key people that are not partners, and asked them what they think I should do, just out of curiosity. I don't really take advice. And uh, and everyone said, let's just cut our comps. And so I slashed compensation 10% across the board. Um, and that was interesting. I thought I was going to lose people, and I didn't lose anyone. And productivity went through the roof.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind to me for that is that obviously you fostered a culture that people want to be at. I mean, employee retention, that people willingly were like, yep, you can reduce us so that we all stay here
Mhm.
rather than having to lay two people off.
Yeah. Yep. Everybody was kind of in their own silo, thinking their own things. And when I started explaining to people what had happened and where we were, because they saw it, but they didn't know it, especially the minute details, I shared our financial statements
Hmm.
with our entire company. And everyone just started getting on the same page and behaving like a team. And, we just closed the books for last year, this week. We executed the turnaround. We actually overshot slightly.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
and I didn't expect to outperform revenue by a couple $100,000.
Hmm.
So I overshot the expenses cutting because I was concerned, and then we overperformed on revenue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
it was a great year. If you would have asked me in 2023 how I felt, I was so frustrated,
Yeah.
primarily because I feel like a lot of this could have been mitigated with the right leadership and the right partnership if people really knew what we were going after.
Hmm.
But I'm so glad I went through that. It would never push me away from partnership. I have multiple partnerships and I'll never do anything alone again.
Interesting.
Yep. I just had a conversation with someone today about it. She had a lot of really bad partnerships and she never wants to have partners again. And she was asking my opinion. And I love partnership. Partnership to me in business is the ability to get 10 years worth of work done in two. And it's really just the politics that you have to manage, the power struggle, the lack of transparency, the egos. But if you manage that well, and if you have good systems and good legal infrastructure, it's the best thing you could do.
Yeah, especially if you find someone, I feel like, who complements your weaknesses with their strengths and vice versa, and
Right.
you can come together and pair perfectly in that sense.
Yep. That's who you make a partner.
Yeah.
Someone who is as dedicated as you to this enterprise, who has a skill set that is completely opposite to yours.
Hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so, with the partners that you had before you gave them the opportunity to walk away, was it all family members? And if so, would you say is that what made it challenging? I know you
No.
mentioned that you acquired the
Yeah.
behavioral company.
No. The family members were the ones that stayed.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, and I don't know how much that had to do with it. In my opinion, the partners that left wanted an independence to their professional lives,
Hmm.
while the ones that stayed really didn't mind being interdependent.
Hmm.
And and the ones that stayed in, I'm a former financial advisor, I think truly understand what equity is, like what stock is. I mean, every publicly traded company has hundreds of thousands, if not millions of partners, right? Jeff Bezos has more partners than anybody else. He only owns a little under 10% equity in Amazon. So they really understand what equity is, and I think a lot of people don't.
Yeah. And so it's the people who did get it who ended up staying. And then now that's what helped you to get to where you are now because of what everyone else contributed.
Yeah. And I think, and by the way, we'll continue to share equity in this company with other key people. We're bringing on a new partner now, who was that person I called when COVID hit. And it's because we all understand what the mission is. And the point of equity is to keep everyone aligned in that mission, to make sure that
Hmm.
we all have skin in the game, not just for profit distribution, but for failure, if that's
Right.
the case. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. And so that's exciting to hear that a new partner is coming on. That was one thing I wanted to ask you is what's next for JBS now that it's the start of 2025. Would love to hear plans that you have coming up and things that you're working on.
So one, we are going to put a lot more emphasis on our growing business, which is our B2B business. Traditionally, JBS is an individual tax preparation firm. We still do over 6,000 personal returns a year.
My gosh.
Yeah, we're high volume. We're 25 full-time employees now.
Hmm.
We're bringing on 12 seasonal staff, nine of which are returning seasonal staffs. Um, so we do a lot of work.
Yeah.
Mm. A lot of it is very simple, but some of it is extremely complex. And while that business has been the core business since '05, this business that we started up in 2020 of, bookkeeping, accounting, controller services, CFO services is growing at dramatic rates, 50% last year, on track for 50% this year. So we're going to be doubling down on that. I'm building my C-level team at the moment. I'm the only
Hmm.
C-level executive. I have a CFO coming in next month. I have my eyes set on a chief operating officer. So I'm building the team that's going to build the next version of this business.
Yeah. And so with that, where do you stand if you are open to sharing? Like what's next for you with JBS?
I do a lot of things here, but I'm looking to come down to a couple of things.
Yeah.
So right now, I'm like chief firefighter, head of technical sales. I'm still financial officer, so I still move all the money. I pay all the bills.
Hmm.
Um, I'm HR. I'm doing a little bit of everything. I want to come down to three functions. I want to sell and service our CFO clients. I want to manage and grow my team. I have so much capacity here. So many of my team members are under 30 and they're growing exponentially. I have a person on my team who just turned 22, whose experience is through the roof. By the time she's my age, she's going to be 2 to 3 times better than I am today,
That's amazing.
especially if I get to keep working with her. Um, so I'm really excited about just spending time developing my team. And I'm going to dabble in some new product development. I have some new products that I'm looking to, and still in the accounting space, but really more tailored to investors.
Hmm.
A very technical product. Um, Essentially, it's going to be real estate accounting and underwriting accounting.
Oh,
And
wow.
underwriting is done when you are trying to raise capital, when you're trying to close on bank financing on a project. And my CFO happens to specialize in bank underwriting between 1 and 100 million. So interesting things in store.
So with that, I'm curious about that. Did you do research and realize that within the Lawrence area, that's where things are going with like the types of business people that are inhabiting it, and that's why you wanted to build up that product? Or what was it that made you want to pursue that this year?
That's a good question. Since 27, I'm a big planner. I built something like 2,500 financial plans in my career. I've worked with a couple thousand business owners on accounting, infrastructure, understanding their business ins and outs, practically across every industry except for commodities. So the
Hmm.
only industries I haven't touched is like gold, oil, precious metals. But every other industry, I've got the opportunity to work with the CEO and see the ins and outs of the business. And one of the things I'm most fascinated in building is investment opportunities for people. So our client base right now is national, but we have obviously a big emphasis in the Merrimack Valley, the Lowell, Lawrence, Methuen, Haverhill. I'd like to teach people of my communities. I'm Dominican. I'd like to teach them that we have very large economies within our communities from like a market cap. If you just look at all the total spending, they're large. The market cap, the medical market capitalization of Lowell reached 1.1 billion in 2022.
Wow.
Massive
Yeah.
for a very small area. Where's the money,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It not most low residents bank accounts or investment accounts. So where is it? And I just hate to continue to see how large our economies are. And our Latino economies across the country are growing faster than any other demographic, and they're not keeping any of the money.
Mhm.
And so I'd like to change that to some capacity.
I really love that you have that personal mission that's tied in with that. And just from what I've seen from businesses that I've worked with, like that's when a business excels, when it's their heart and their mission that's so closely tied into and shown through what they do. That's when things really take off. So I love that.
Yeah. Um, the thing that got me into financial planning, Ashley, uh, I didn't think I was going to be in it long, but once I realized what it was, I was just fascinated with learning it.
Hmm.
And then once I realized who it was designed for, I knew I wouldn't be there for the rest of my life
Yeah.
because the incentive for a financial advisor is to find people who are pretty well off to help them retain their wealth, protect it, and
Hmm.
then grow it. That's how we get paid well. For me to sit there and teach someone how to build it, I could certainly do that day in, day out, but there's no financial incentive for me to do that. And that's so broken. It's a model that I'd be interested in tackling in the future. But right now, my motivation is very simple. My mom was a very successful entrepreneur throughout her whole life. She still is, but she suffered a lot of challenges, including two bankruptcies and multiple failed investments. And I just feel like if she had a guide, an advisor, a good one, an honest one, and my brother, same with him, I feel like they would have been so much further along than where they are right now.
Yeah. And so it's really the idea of giving back to people and being able to show them that the opportunity is there and
Mhm.
that they are able to reach it in that sense.
Yep. And I was talking to a good friend of mine and doing some, I do a lot of a year-end personal analysis, uh, professional analysis, and I realized that my best clients, there's six of them now who I work with like on a weekly basis. They either remind me of my mom or my brother.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I've heard that like and I feel like that too with clients that I have like the best types of clients are the people that are a reflection of you or a reflection of close people in your life and that's why things work out so well because of
Yep.
that.
Yep. Yep. And I've had this innate desire to ensure that they're well off and that they can, retire comfortably and live their most successful life, however that looks like. And
Hmm.
it's literally the same thing I do for these six people. It's
Yeah.
so, I just came
Yeah.
to the realization like last month.
And isn't that funny how that happens? You're like, well, wait a second. Now this is all
Yep.
making sense.
Yep. And now that I know that, I can target much better because that's the
Right.
stuff that brings me energy. Is people think it's just about money. Obviously, those are my best paying clients. Uh,
Hmm.
some they pay me thousands a month. Um, but to me, that's irrelevant compared to how I feel after I talk to them.
Right. Yeah. And that's what's most important is almost like that gut check or like that
Yep.
vibe check of being able to see how
Yep.
people make you feel.
Yep. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. And so with so many things that are coming up within the next year for JBS and everything that you've been doing, like being in such like a high ambitious career, like how do you balance work and
Mm.
life? I mean, having a family and obviously having other things that you're passionate about,
Yep.
like pickleball and cooking and traveling, which is
Yep.
mentioned in your bio. Like, how do you juggle it all?
Yep. I don't like that word balance.
It's,
Uh,
I agree with you. There's never
I've
going to be a
been
50-50.
never. I've been struggling with that for a long time. I'll tell you technically how I do it, and then I'll tell you philosophically how I do it. I had a phenomenal mentor when I came out of college in wealth management. If not for him, I would have been an entirely different person. If not for like my mom, my brother, him, and my wife, I don't know who I would have become. But those four people
Mhm.
really shaped me. He taught me the importance of a calendar. And for the last 10 years, everything has been scheduled for me.
Yeah.
Every. So I have on average 30 meetings a week. I could never manage that productively without the time management skills that I've learned over the last decade. Um, I do all of my personal fitness activities, if you will, pickleball, weightlifting, whatever, before 8 a.m. It's the only time. I have two kids now. I
Yeah.
tried to do it after work. My wife said, "No, I need you to come home after work." So, so I wake up, between anywhere between 4:30 and 5:45.
Hmm.
I take care of myself first, then I go to work, and 99%, it's probably coming down to 95% now. I finish my day the same way. I leave work. I drive straight home. I typically make a stop at the grocery store because if I don't do it like this, I end up throwing a lot of food out. I grab the couple things I need for dinner. I get home. I sit down and hang out with the family for a bit. Then I go right to the kitchen and start dinner. And I
Hmm.
cook dinner probably 26, 27 days out of 30 in the month.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep. And every day we sit, and I have it down to like, I could get it done depending on what I'm making, 30 to 45 minutes. And we're not, we eat pretty good. Um, and then my daughter, she's 3.5. She already knows, like, all right, dinner's almost ready. We're going to set the table and then we're going to sit down and we're going to eat dinner.
Yeah.
So we got it down to a science. And one of the best things that I heard over the last 6 months my daughter was FaceTiming my sister, and she was explaining our day, like her getting up, going to school, blah, blah, blah. And she got to dinner time, and she was like, then dad gets home and he makes dinner, and then we all sit as a family and eat dinner.
I love
And
that.
I never told her that before, and it was just the best thing I've heard.
Yeah. I feel like that's the way to go. You mentioned like with calendars and routines. Like I thrive on having a routine. If I
Mhm.
didn't have a routine, it throws off my entire
Mhm.
day, my entire week. And
Yep,
you nailed it. I mean, with having so many things that you need to do, if it's not penciled in, then it's not going to get done. And so I think that's the perfect way to make sure that you're prioritizing the all of the things that are important to you and making sure you have time for them, whether
yep,
it's like the cooking, the family, the pickleball, work, anything that you're focusing on.
that's right. And that literally breaks down 20 hours of my, if you add sleep in there, 20 of my 24 hours is just that. It's work,
Hmm.
it's my family, it's exercise. And, I haven't been on social media since 2016. I really don't have any. Someone asked me on my team, like, man, you got to have some vices. Like, what the hell do you do? I watch a lot of YouTube, especially while I'm commuting. I'm listening to a lot of YouTube.
Mm,
That's certainly a vice. And sometimes I'm listening to productive stuff, but sometimes I'm just watching this random guy build a cabin in the woods because one day I want to build a cabin in the woods.
yeah.
Or sometimes I'm just watching this woman make this dish that I've been thinking about trying for the last few months.
Hmm.
And, once in a while, I like to get after it with my friends.
I love that. And I like that you mentioned cooking specifically because I was just talking with a friend last week, and that's one thing that I mentioned to her where I was like, cooking dinner is my transition activity. Like I
Yep.
finish work for the day, and when I cook dinner, I either throw on music or throw on a podcast, and that's my way to transition out of work mode into relaxation mode, and being able to and rest in that sense. And so it
Yep.
sounds like it's kind of the same for you, just being
Bingo.
able to have that.
Yep. It's the one thing that shuts off work.
Yeah.
If I didn't cook, I would get home and I'd still be processing work.
Hmm.
Yep. So by the
Yeah.
time I sit down at the dinner table, it's like, all right, what everyone do today? The last person I want to talk about is me. The last thing I want to talk about is work. And yeah, it's a good time. And we all get to bed. All of us are sleeping by like 9. We're all in bed by like 8, 8:30,
Yeah.
and back up at it at 5.
Yeah. Amazing. So for anyone listening who is interested in pursuing either like the financial planning or the tax field, what advice would you have to give to them for getting started?
That's a tough question, Ashley, because I don't believe in generic advice.
Mm,
Um, you're listening to a lot of podcasts, spending time online. I listen to a ton of podcasts. The biggest issue I have with it is the generic advice.
hmm.
The advice, the one size fits all stuff. The only advice I'd be okay with, someone asked me a question once, it's like, if you could put up a billboard and it was guaranteed that all 8 billion people on Earth were going to see this billboard, what would it say? That was a great,
Wow, that's a
yeah,
loaded question.
that's a great question. And they were asking it, we were at a financial planning conference, so they were asking it specifically about planning.
Mm,
And the answer came to me right away. It was like, I don't care who you are, where you live, find out what you earn gross before taxes on an annual basis. And if you can just learn to live on 80% of that and save and invest 20%, money will never be an issue for you and your family ever again. That's the only advice I could give to everyone.
yeah.
Everything else, it really depends on their situation.
Yeah.
So I no longer offer financial advice because I don't have my active licenses. So I can't do
Hmm.
any personal financial planning. But for those who are interested, do some research first independently because I can't send you to go talk to an advisor. Most people aren't ready to talk to an advisor. There's so much free resources. Go find out how to, for example, purchase an S&P 500 index fund and just keep popping money in there and forget about it. To be honest, if everyone just takes that advice, they'll do better than 92% of hedge fund managers.
Wow.
Yep. Investing could be so simple. The reason it isn't is because it's super boring if you do it right. I explained this to a client earlier. Think about it this way. Imagine instead of talking about the markets, we're talking about a casino. So Robinhood opened up the doors for people, right? To trade. Imagine if this was a casino. and you get two options this time instead of one. You can either sit there and play at the tables or play slots, or you can speak to the casino owners and convince them to give you equity in the casino. Which one would you choose?
I would say equity in the casino.
Yeah. I mean, you feel pretty confident that they're going to make some money, right?
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed, but
Hmm.
when's the last time the casino lost money?
Right.
Maybe it had a bad year, right? That's exactly what I saw happen with the come up of Robinhood. So
Hmm.
now everyone got an opportunity to invest $1, $5 into the S&P 500 index, which is just an index of the top 500 companies in the US. So me, you, we can put $5 in there and we can own a piece of Microsoft, Apple is diversified across the top 500. We don't have to worry about what's going to work, what's not going to work. Everything's getting done automatic. And instead, we all sat down and played slots, day trading, losing money, guaranteed. You might win a couple, you might hit a jackpot, but eventually you'll give it all up.
Mm.
And it's crazy to me that more people aren't just going to buy an SPY, S&P 500 index fund, and forgetting about it and just waiting for the casino to pay them out instead of trading. But it's super boring.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think you gave a great point there about just having people just start researching. I mean, you made a great point about people finding it boring. And I also think that I imagine that people probably are intimidated with just kind of getting
Mm.
started. But it's like anyone has the opportunity to invest. Like you said, you don't need to have a certain amount of money or do anything specific. It's just anyone can get started.
Yep. And anyone could get started at a level that 25 years ago you couldn't achieve without $100,000 minimum
Hmm.
because of these new technologies. It's funny, Ash, you work out.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So that's boring too.
Right.
You get up in the morning, you get out of your warm bed into the cold ass 17-degree climate that we had this morning.
Yeah.
And you drive to the gym, and then you get there and you're still tired, and you have to start picking up heavy things to put it down to pick it up again. And then you do some cardio, and it's like it sucks.
Hmm.
And then you got to make sure you're eating right, because if not, that was a waste,
Oh yeah, then you're
right?
crashing.
Yep. And then you do that for 90 days, and it's like, oh my God, I feel like an entirely different person.
Yep.
But day one sucked, day two sucked, day three sucked, day 30 sucked. It still sucks. Day 90, you're doing the same thing, but you're so much more excited about it now.
Hmm.
And the same thing with investing is and saving money is like, yeah, there's nothing cool about putting $20 aside this week and then doing it again next week and then doing it again next week. But it is cool to see $1,000 in your account. It just takes time. You want it to happen faster? Put 40, stop putting 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
And same concept.
I
But
agree.
but most people don't exercise and most people don't invest.
Yeah. So what you said, I'm gonna pull out my phone because it reminded me of a quote that I heard last night, and I was like, "This is so good that I'm gonna write it down." And I feel like it's fitting to this. But it was, um, here it is. You have to believe that something is working even when you can't see the evidence that it's working. And
Right.
so I saw that on Instagram last night and I said, that is so true. And it goes to your point of like, people might not see it right away. They might find it to be boring, but you have to do it anyway because you know that it's working out and you will see that in the future.
Yep. Yep. And if you do, I heard a great quote on that vein. If you do easy things, you're going to have a difficult life. And if you do difficult things, you're going to have an easy life. It's just
Yeah.
like you have to, nothing. I hate people that try to do things quickly or get things quickly. And it's like, you know that if you get something quickly, you'll lose it quickly too.
Hmm.
It's almost like people don't correlate that. They don't see that. It's like, no, I want something that's really hard to achieve.
Yeah,
One, because I could become the person that could achieve something that's really hard to do. And two, because then it's going to be really hard for someone to take it away from me.
that's true. Yeah.
But we live in a very different society.
Yeah. I feel like that could be your potential next career is just philosophical thinking. I feel like you have so
Hmm.
many ideas and things and quotes that come to mind. That's like your next role, Rob.
I've always wanted to write.
Yeah.
In sophomore year of high school, I've wanted to write. my mom drilled in a concept into me. She told me junior year. So 1 year after that, she told me, hey, I don't even know where we were driving. We were just sitting in the car like we've done 10,000 times. And she's like, hey, kid, you have a pretty expensive lifestyle. I want to tell you that. Um, like you like nice things. And I know that because I'm paying for it. So I recommend you make a decent amount of money. Like whatever you do with this school stuff, and then you're gonna go to college, you're gonna choose a career. I recommend you choose a career that pays well. And that I don't know why that never, and it was very interesting because growing up, my mom didn't have a lot of money.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I was like 11, 12, she started really doing much better than she had ever done before. And then by the time I hit high school, she was outperforming most people around us. So it was such an interesting flip.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, she was buying me, she was really proud of herself. And she was essentially, as long as I came home with good grades and I got into a great prep school, she was really excited about that. She would just buy me like any Jordans that I wanted or bought me a Freedom. She bought me my dream car when I was 16 and a half. I couldn't believe it. I don't even
Hmm.
know why she did that to this day. And I was just so pumped about that and so proud of her and obviously very happy for myself. And then she told me that, and I was like, oh shit, okay. So I decided, I don't know if this was a good decision or not, to spend time accumulating all the assets. I almost wanted to consolidate my financial career into like 15, 20 years instead of 40
Hmm.
and accumulate all the money I would hypothetically need to retire. Thankfully, I had just learned retirement planning at the highest levels. Um, and then my deal was, okay, great. By 40, you'll have all the capital you need to never work again. And then you can write. And yeah, um, so I probably will at some point.
Yes, I love that. Well, I will be excited when that day comes, even if it's 15 or so years down the
Hmm.
line. You'll have to email me 15
Well,
years later
no,
and
no,
say,
we're 8.5 years left.
oh, well, there we go.
Oh
So eight
yeah.
and a half years left.
Oh yeah. And we're on track for an early retirement. The only downside is my wife's still gonna have to work for a little bit. She hasn't really worked. She hasn't entered the workforce formally yet.
Hmm.
She had a couple years stint where she was an RN, 36 hours a week for like 2 years. But before that, she went back to school to get her RN. After that, we had kids. So she's working like 10 hours a week right now. So I was like, babe, I'm gonna retire when we're 40, but you haven't worked like how I worked. So someone's gonna have to carry the health insurance, keep putting money into the retirement accounts.
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be good though. I'll do the first half, she'll do the second.
There you go. That's a fair way to split it up.
Yep.
Rob, as we get to the end of this episode, my favorite question to ask our guests is what their favorite local businesses are to support. And so I haven't interviewed anyone from the Lawrence area
Hmm.
yet, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Man, there's so many. I eat at so many of our clients, Hapu, Fuego. Um, those are near and dear to my heart. We do business with like 300 or 400 local businesses here.
Amazing.
Me and my team are always sharing the wealth and supporting each other. Um, but honestly, I come to work and then I go home and then I go to the gym and then I come to work. And so not much of my time is spent at businesses. I did just place a massive order with Omni Digital Print, who has been our printing partner since 2005. We're also next door neighbors.
That's awesome.
One of the best things I ever saw was the owner retired and sold the business to his key person who had been there since my brother and him started at the same time in their early 20s. And to see him buy the business from the former owner and now operate it with his wife, 2 locations, is awesome. So I'll always continue to support them. Love the story.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is really great. Rob, this has been a really interesting episode, and I've really enjoyed having you on the show. And I would love to give you the opportunity to share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect further.
Yeah, we're JBS Corp, jbscorp.net. We have a podcast that just recently came out, primarily on YouTube, also on Spotify, One Step Beyond Failure. Um, that's a concept from Napoleon Hill, who's my favorite author. And we're definitely going to have you on the show too, actually.
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. Look forward to talking about your business next.
All right. Thanks, Rob.